Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning from wherever you are, and welcome to our Barbie discussion, review, and other things surrounding the whole epic release that was Barbie, and the kind of culture surrounding it, and reactions around it, and all this kind of stuff. And firstly, I just want to say that it's killed it at the box office. It's at the moment, it's only been out 4 days. It's got over 300 million. Oppenheimer at 174 million, which is excellent for an R-rated film after 3 days. There's no comparisons to be made here because PG-13 is almost always going to win. And Oppenheimer, although it's an epic looking biopic, it's a biopic and it's a drama and it's been done before. Whereas Barbie, kind of, that first trailer burst onto the scene, everyone's like, what the hell is this? This is way better than I expected. Like the surrealism, the silliness of it. Like I personally, I was sold from the first trailer. And it's a good thing too, because I haven't watched any other trailer since, because I didn't want anything spoiled. But I was sold on the first trailer because it's ticked the box of, you know what you are, you're not taking yourself too seriously, and you've gone surreal with it. And Margot Robbie is a goddamn genius. See, that is an executive producer who knows what they're doing. You give them the property and you allow them to take full control with it. She got on Greta Gerwig and all this kind of stuff. So I cannot sing her praises enough. I mean, Margot Robbie, I hated her Harley Quinn, but I like her in general. I think she's a brilliant actress. There was that weird Hollywood film that came out recently, and she was fantastic in it. That film doesn't get enough praise. Like, if you don't know about classic cinema added in with farcical comedy and franticness, I love that film. I can't remember what it was called. Anyway, she is the prime example of what I've always keep saying about executive producers. If you're going to put them in, they have to be artists. They have to be actors, directors, writers. They have to know what they're doing. All these other soulless dregs that have taken over other properties, just like, well, I can't say much on Kurtzman because, to be fair, I have to concede that he's turning things around for Star Trek, and that's fair enough. That's what you want. Like, if Kennedy did that with Star Wars, I'd be very happy as well. But that's not the case, okay? We haven't had a film for 4 years. Going on 6 years, 7 years by the time the strike is over and by the time they get filming to another film. Okay, that's unacceptable. They still get their job and earn millions and millions of dollars. Hamada, who had the DC property, god awful. I don't know how the hell he got it. But also, the other guy that's with James Gunn, he was also part of that team of producers and he's managed to keep his job. So I hope Gunn slaps him into place. But the point is, you took somebody who is an artist, and it's something that they love. Prime example with Andy Samberg and Seth Rogen with Turtles, with Chippendales and all this kind of stuff. It's a property that they love, and they are extremely talented people within their own right. I'm not like the biggest Seth Rogen fan, but I don't hate the dude. He's a lovely dude. And as executive producer, him and as well as Andy Samberg, just thumbs up, because they know what they're doing and they love the property. It's as simple as that. And I've argued that ever since the era of John Peters, who absolutely destroyed Batman and Superman. Okay, so that being said, I can't remember what I was saying before that, but I'll just say, Margot Robbie obviously stars in it. She executive produces. She's wonderful as Barbie. And Greta Gerwig does a great job with the writing and directing. The only gripe I have with the film is the messaging in it is very corny, very just delivered in such an American cheesy way. And I really feel that at that point, when delivering the message, as important as it was, and I'll get to that, they should have had a British writer come in to do that, because of the amount of times they do it. It kind of loses its punch when talking about the patriarchy and feminism and women's issues. Even though when you're doing Barbie, it had to do that. It had to. It couldn't just be 90 minutes or 2 hours, as this film was, of trying to sell you a toy. It couldn't do that. It would have just it would have just been G.I. Joe, basically. And Lord knows we don't need another G.I. Joe and another Transformers. Like, Hasbro and Paramount have completely butchered those properties. Whereas Barbie, they did it right. They're like, yes, it's Barbie. Yes, you know it's a toy. We're going to tell you the story of a toy. But we're going to deal with a lot of the world issues that kind of surrounded Barbie. And what she stands for and what she doesn't stand for. And is she a good role model for children and all of that? But I'd argue it's a fucking toy. Who cares? But the point is, just for those bits, yeah, I would have got a different writer in just to cover those, because they could have had a lot more fun with it, a lot more nuanced with it. That being said, I am glad they do it. I am glad, like, if you're very anti-woke, like if your position is that if something's gonna have woke messaging and all this kind of, or let's just say progressive messaging for those that hate progress and hate women and hate gay people and hate gay and trans people, because that's what you are. Okay, if you're anti-woke, you're just basically a racist bigot and a misogynist. That's it. It's as simple as that. So, if you don't like all that stuff, you're not going to like this film. But I find that the way it does it, for the most part, is really, really sweet. And I love that the Barbie universe, they cover all the Barbies. Because if you see the toys on the aisles, you know, being an avid toy collector, I've seen all the, like, I don't collect Barbies, and if I did, who gives a shit? But, you know, being an avid toy collector, I'm kind of up on this kind of stuff. And Barbie's done a great job in pushing diversity within its toys. Like, you've got your larger Barbies, wheelchair Barbies, Barbies of different races and ethnicities, even, like, and they've done a really good job with that. And I'm glad they put that in the film. And it was always going to be like that. I would have not liked it if it was just a film about, you know, Margot Robbie is the established Barbie in the universe, and then a new Barbie comes along, and then you have this kind of catty female rivalry kind of thing. I think that would have just been a bit meh. But what they do with it, and the kind of emotions attached to it, and this, like, you know, it's what's happening in the real world affects the kind of fictional Barbie land, and so Barbie has to go into the real world and kind of try and fix that. And then the star of the fucking show really shines here, because as much as I want to say that Margot Robbie was fantastic, and she was, Ryan Gosling really was the star of this film. He really was. But again, it's just a testament to the man who, his attitude is, I'm going to put my fucking all into everything, no matter what you give me. He doesn't half-ass anything. And of all the stuff that Ryan Gosling has done, this is my favourite role of his. He was hilarious. His emotions were fantastic. The way he kind of grows into embracing the patriarchy and all this kind of stuff was so brilliantly done in a dumb way that it just added to what made this film great. You know, it does get dark at points. It does, like, you know, the whole Barbie land is kind of turned upside down when things from the real world influence Barbie's world and all this kind of stuff, and the way they do it and how things change and how they fight back against it. It's just brilliant. It's just silly fun. It's just, you know, toys fighting toys, and just comedic. And I've got to say, the film is sexy as hell. I don't often say that about films, but the film was sexy as hell. You know, if you're into your men, you're going to love Ryan Gosling with his chiseled looks, and the guy who plays Shang-Chi and his chiseled look, and all the chiseled men that are in there and all this kind of shit. And if you like your women, you know, the skimpy outfits and like fucking legs for days and just beauty all over. Wonderful. Like, they did not hold back on the film being really sexy, and some of the topics, like, they openly talk about genitalia and virginities and all this kind of stuff. So although it's a PG-13, it is geared towards kind of a teenage audience, teenage kids and all this kind of teenage girls, which is not what happened. Initially, that's what they thought their target audience are, but you got people like me who just want to go into a world of weirdness, which I love. The weirder a film is, the more the more you've sold it to me. So, you know, to have people like me interested, a bunch of middle-aged men going in to watch it. I think you've done it well. And the sexiness is not even like, you don't even see that in the trailer. So people aren't going in there on that merit. They're going in there because they're like, the curiosity has peaked. And I find that it does deliver really, really well. It just needs to cut back on the messaging a bit, because it takes away from some of the funnier elements and all of that. But again, with that, I feel like the only kind of wasted moments were with Will Ferrell, like the whole Mattel executives. They didn't really need to be there. It could have just been Barbie going out there and finding someone who they're meant to find, and then all that kind of taking place afterwards back in Barbie Land and all this kind of stuff. The executives didn't do anything. They just put Will Ferrell in there and James Alexandru, I think his name is, in there, and they don't really do or add anything. So they could have trimmed them out of the film, definitely. But the most interesting thing with the Barbie, now that we've covered the film pretty well. Oh, I can't remember if I've talked about the soundtrack or not. The soundtrack is spectacular. Very pop dancey kind of tunes. And Billie Eilish has a fantastically gorgeous song in there as well. And Ryan Gosling, who can sing, by the way, has his song I'm Just Ken, which is brilliant. And there's a couple of other wonderful pop tracks in there, produced by Mark Ronson, who is a very talented musician. And so I highly recommend, if you've got Spotify or whatever, or just on YouTube, just go and listen to the soundtrack, because it is really, really good. If you've got an eclectic taste in music like I do, I'm sure Zam does as well. But the thing that I wanted to really focus on 12 minutes into the video about Barbie, it is the kind of, well, not so much the cultural impact, it's the reactions people had to it. In that any other, if it was done in such a bland way, like the trailer came out and it was bland, nobody would have reacted to it in the same way. If it was a generic by the numbers film, nobody would have, gave a shit about it, moved on, and Oppenheimer would be the one getting all the attention. But the marketing behind it, the fact that they embrace surrealism and the genius of Margot Robbie and what she did, with what she wanted to do and insisted on doing along with Greta Gerwig with the property, and they had to fight Mattel a couple of times on certain issues, I think is a testament and should be the blueprint moving forward with what you do with toy properties. I'm not saying everything needs to be about chicks and the patriarchy and all this kind of stuff. What I mean is, you have to, when you have a property from the 80s, I know Barbie predates that, but I'm saying you have to embrace it for what it is and don't try to make it something like Transformers. And Transformers was god-awful. G.I. Joe was god-awful, because those were, 7 Transformers films and they're all the same. They follow the same goddamn story. Always the same. A young man or woman, robot, bad guys, blah, blah, blah. Humans. Godzilla, Kong did all the same kind of stuff. Alright? And G.I. Joe was just one big toy commercial. It didn't really bother doing anything else. It was so badly executed. So when I say, Barbie just took what it was. It said, yes, we're a toy, but how the hell do you bring something as... Because with Barbie, you could easily just make it into a Hallmark film and it would be the same thing if you really wanted to. But how they did it is a fantastic blueprint for others. Like, for example, we talked about this in the World's Gone Insane podcast. Every Friday, 10 o'clock. Okay? But we talked about, like, if I had Mask, if I did the 80s classic cartoon Mask into a live action film, I would still set it in the 1980s with the vehicles of that era, the music of Shuki Levy and Avi Arad. By far, I would see if they could come on board and do the soundtrack. All right, but their music, or the music that was already established in the show, and just given a kind of operatic update. But I would embrace it, and not just that, I would have more fun with it. just go crazy on the kind of 80s-ness of it, like proper cocaine-fueled toy craziness. And I think that's what you should do with your properties moving forward. Don't take them too seriously. You've got a niche audience there that's older now, so you've got to find the ways to bring in the new crowd. The way you do it is you make things weird, loud, and wonderful, but also when they go into the film and they see the film and the critics see the film, there's a well-written story with fantastically well-rounded and well-written characters. And Barbie did all of that. And this is why the clever marketing around it and putting it up against Oppenheimer, which would have helped Oppenheimer, by the way, if anything, really helped elevate this film to, like, it's been like the talk of the summer. It's been Barbie and Oppenheimer. It's been, I can't remember the last time, I say that, it was probably Infinity War and Endgame kind of created that kind of buzz and anticipation around the film. And then, of course, there is the obvious outcry from right-wingers that we will talk about as well, and how they hate the film because obviously, it tackles the misogyny, the patriarchy, and talks about feminism and all that. But again, what they fail to see, and a lot of people fail to see, is, and I think you'll only notice it if you've been in Ken's position. But it does deal with his insecurities and, trying to find his place in the world and feeling dejected by the woman that he loves and all this kind of shit. And if you've been there, you can sympathize with the character a lot. But also, if you understand women going through, you can kind of see that he's changing for the worst as well. So there's both sides. And if you're open-minded and in theory a normal human being, you'll see both sides of the Ken spectrum, and that's why he's a wonderful focal point of the film, because we know the kind of struggles that Barbie's going to have, but you have to, if you understand the kind of stuff that Ken goes through and his transformation, you'll understand the kind of messaging behind the film. And I just think it's just so well done. But a lot of people, I'm noticing people aren't picking up on it. They're just like, oh, Ken's just a bad guy, he's a misogynist and all this kind of stuff. Well, no, there's more to it than that. Yes, of course, the messaging in the film lacks its kind of nuances and clever takes and all this kind of shit. But at the end of the day, it's not there for right-wingers. This film is not there for right-wingers. It's not there for misogynistic arseholes. The film is meant to be there for women and teenage girls who gonna see a film, they're gonna be like, I can fucking relate to this. I relate to everything each one of these Barbies goes through, and it sucks and it hurts, and thank you for fucking getting that message out and all this kind of stuff. See, our thoughts and our perceptions of the film are technically irrelevant because we're not the target audience, but because we coming in with open minds and can see that messaging and can see, and can relate to it and understand what, women go through or what trans people go through or non-binary people go through, because we could see that and understand it. We can't necessarily relate to it, but at least understand it. It's what makes that experience that much more fun. Because it's like, hey, there's good messaging in here and people should take it to heart. And on the flip side, there's Ken who we can relate to as well. So there is something in there for everyone. And I just think that's the power in the film and what it gets right. Some people might see that, some people won't. Some people get hung up on certain things. But I've said it once, I've said it again. We're not here to amuse or pander to the right. They are irrelevant when it comes to cultural stuff. They are dinosaurs. They're fucking dangerous dinosaurs. But the best tool you can have is just not react to them, ignore them, and just carry on making your art. But again, I have said, also don't keep trying to pander to the woke mob if that's not where your art is. This is what they wanted to do with Barbie, and they've done it really, really well. And I just had a really good time. And I can't wait for it to come out on digital as well. And I'll enjoy watching it. And that's it really. 20 minutes talking about Barbie. What a world we live in. What a world we live in. But when Hollywood gets it right and just has fun with it and goes surreal, you're always going to win idiots like me over. It's that simple. Even though I'm irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, it is just for me refreshing to see something so wonderfully odd and silly and meaningful and heartfelt and just something that has fun with it. So massive thumbs up. And yeah, just a fascinating subject matter in general. Barbie will be, I think, it should be used as a case study for people wanting to convert their toy properties into movies, but also for filmmakers to kind of see how you can create such a huge buzz around something that has no right to be as successful or as good as it is. And on that note, I leave you and let normality resume. Bye.